Today we're going to be talking about order of operations, which I know that you have done before because I've already had some people talk about it. So first, to evaluate an expression, you find its numerical value. So we've seen problems like this already this year, where if the directions say evaluate, it really just means solve. So this means solve. If a numerical expression has more than one operation, and when I say operation, I mean add, subtract, multiply, or divide, we're going to use the order of operations. Many people remember this as please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, so if you want to write that down at the bottom you can. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So this tells us the first letter of each word tells us the order of operations. So first is parentheses, and this is spelled kind of weird. Parentheses. And then we have exponents. And then multiplication. And then division. And then add and subtract. Now, one important thing is sometimes you'll have only multiplication division in the problem or only addition and subtraction. In this case, we are going to go left to right. So it's not always necessarily you always multiply before you divide. It depends on the problem. So I like to think of this as multiplication and division going together and addition and subtraction going together. So I put a box around those to remind me those kind of are pairs. They go with each other. Okay, on the next page, it says Mrs. Avery assigned the problem 5 plus 3 times 4. Tyler and James did the problem differently, and here's their work. First thing we want to see is what operation did Tyler do first. So here's the original problem. It looks like he did 5 plus 3 is 8 first, so he added. Number 2, what operation did James do first? So I look at what changed. He said 3 times 4 is 12, so he multiplied first. And then we need to figure out whose answer is correct. So thinking of order of operations, we need to think, do we add first or do we multiply first? And the correct answer is we multiply. So James, and it says explain, so because the order of operations says you multiply before adding. Okay, now we're going to look at some examples. Part A, 20 minus 3 times 5. So this is very similar to what we just looked at with Tyler and James. So we are going to multiply first to get 20 minus 15, and then 20 minus 15 is 5. So don't do 20 minus 3 is 17, and then 17 times 5. Think of order of operations, we need to multiply first. Part B, we have all multiplication and division in the problem, which means we go left to right. So start with 30 divided by 5, which is 6, and then bring down the times 3. 6 times 3 is 18. Part C, I have some parentheses, so I'm going to do that first. So 10 minus 7 is 3. Now, I still have parentheses in the problem, but in this case, since there's only one number in each set of the parentheses, that just tells me to multiply. So 4 times 3 is 12, and 2 times 3 is 6. 12 plus 6 is 18. So just because it's parentheses doesn't mean there's stuff to do inside of it. If there's only one number in the parentheses, that just is another way to write multiplication. Part D, I have parentheses again. So 4 plus 6 is 10. Again, I see the parentheses, but here they just mean multiplication. 7 times 8 is 56. 5 times 10 is 50. Bring down your subtraction symbol. 56 minus 50 is 6. Okay, I'm going to scroll down. Okay, part E. Now this one's kind of weird. Normally we would look at it and say, okay, no parentheses, no exponents, but that line means division. So some people might think we do 60 divided by 2 and then 15 divided by 7, but that's actually not the case. Another way to think of parentheses as being your first step is also think of things that are grouped together being your first step. So you can kind of think of this as being grouped and your denominator being grouped. So we can put parentheses there if we want. So I'm going to do 60 minus 15 first, which is 45. 2 plus 7, which is 9. Then 45 divided by 9 is 5. So if you didn't know, this line means divide. Okay, part F, I see some parentheses. This one's going to give me some negatives. So 3 minus 5 is negative 2. And then I have exponents, so I need to think, what is negative 2 cubed? So that's negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. And 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. So this negative 2 cubed becomes a negative 8. And then 2 times negative 8 is negative 16. And again, here we see parentheses, but there's just one number in it. Here the parentheses is just telling me it's a negative. So they're just putting that there so you didn't lose your sign. So now those are the same signs, so we add and keep to get negative 17 as our answer. Okay, our last example says Adeline earns an allowance of $5 per week. She also earns $8 per hour babysitting and usually babysits 6 hours each week. Write and evaluate an expression for the total amount of money she earns in 1 week. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. So let's go back. $5 per week. Per means multiply. So this means 5 times the number of weeks. You don't need to rewrite that if you don't want to, but just know per means times. Then we have 8 per hour, so 8 times the number of hours. She babysits for 6 hours, right? And evaluate, so evaluate means solve. An expression means no equal sign. And we're dealing with 1 week. So going back to the beginning, 5 times the number of weeks. So 5 times, I look, how many weeks is she babysitting? 1. So I plug in 1. Then I'm going to add what she's going to make per hour babysitting. So 8 times the number of hours. So looking through, we have 6 hours. And since it says expression, I don't need an equal sign. So I'm going to go ahead and evaluate this. I'm going to solve it. So I get 5 plus 8 times 6 is 48. And 5 plus 48 is $53. Now they want me to make a table saying, okay, what if instead of babysitting for 6 hours, she did 7, 8, or 9? So we're going to start off with an expression, and it still says just 1 week. So we have 5 plus, now it's 8 times 7 instead of 8 times 6, which is 5 plus 56, which is $61. For 8 hours, we're going to plug in 8 for our hours to get 5 plus 64, which is 69. And then last, plug in 9 for our number of hours to get 5 plus 72, which is 77. So you can see we went from 53 to 61 to 69 to 77, so it went up $8 each time, which is what we wanted, because since we get $8 per hour, we're going to make an additional $8 for each additional hour that we work, so that made perfect sense. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, as always.